For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, presented by FL Montreal, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL Montreal's Josh Miller. Good evening, Josh.
Hello, Dan.
And nice to have you back after a
Good
week
to be
of,
back.
Traveling and recuperating. Tonight, we usually do a bit of a chat at the beginning on entrepreneurial stories, but we have one big story that we're going to get to in just a second. This evening on the program, we're going to talk about spas and beauty with Victor and Richard from Intercoupe Le Spa, popular business around the Decatur area, and later in the show we'll be speaking with Micheline Mayette, HR consultant on culture and conflict resolution in the workplace. But first, as you know, Josh, of course, we've been following this story very closely over the last few weeks. This is the big tax changes coming for entrepreneurs. The federal Liberal government says it will lower small business tax rates to 10% in January and 9% in 2019. This is an effort to I suppose, stem some of the, or avoid some of the criticism after these small business tax changes. The small business tax rate currently at 10.5%, so again, dropping to 10% in January, and then 9% in 2019. And joining us in studio now is Nick Moretis, tax partner at FL. Josh, Nick, your thoughts on the government move here?
Well, there's no question that there was some backpedaling. There's no question that when they came out July 18th, the onslaught of commentary, scathing commentary from so many different associations, organizations, entrepreneurs, certainly made them think a little bit and came back with some adjustments to their proposals, but not completely. So we'll turn to Nick and we'll get right into the meat of it, at least some of it. And Nick, I guess that there's a few areas that they've slightly adjusted their thinking on. So let's kind of hit them one at a time. There's no question, Dan just started talking about the reduction in the small business rate. That's something that's kind of new when they came out to it with it. Maybe we can start there.
It looks like they backpedaled a bit. There was no discussion of reducing the small business tax rate. Now they're saying, well, we weren't going to do it until we looked at everything else about private corporations. So, Dan, you're right. It goes to 10% January 1st, 2018, and falls to 9% the year later, January 1st, 2019. So a business here in Quebec is going to be looking to pay 18% as of next year, and if my math is correct, 17% the year after. However, in Quebec, if you don't have more than, it works out to about 3 employees, you will be paying a higher rate. So it's really a proposal that's supposed to help small businesses grow, gives them extra cash to pay down debt, buy equipment, hire employees. But what this seems to be going is that there were several proposals they came at, the government came at. So this is a little bit of a gimme. So the average Canadian private corporation business, according to the government documents here, earns about $100,000 worth of profit pre-tax. So if they're saving at 1.5%, eventually it'll be about $1,500 worth of annual tax savings.
I guess they're going back to their original platform. You know, that there was supposed to be reduction in rates over time, so they're kind of bringing it in almost after the fact.
That's right, and they're trying to appease, I guess, the smaller businesses, because there is. Those businesses usually are the ones that are undercapitalized. They're like, we've had people on the show where you had to borrow from family and friends to get into the business, etc. So that's what these lower tax rates are designed to do. So
in addition to the lower tax rates, which is a bit of news today, then there's also the other items, some of the other proposed changes that they're adjusting, they're modifying. Again, let's touch on them one at a time. Income sprinkling.
So there was income sprinkling, the lifetime capital gains exemption, converting income into capital gains, and then the discussion regarding investment income earned by Canadian private corporations. So on the income splitting, they're still maintaining the principle that we want to limit the amount of income that can be paid to family members. But now what they seem to be saying is what was verbally said, and I can't quite find it in the written documents, is if the family member is not at all involved in the business, then any monies paid to them will be taxed at the top tax rate, regardless if it's $1 or $1 million. It doesn't matter. So that's automatically top rate. What isn't clear is what happens if you are working in the business, and then to what degree. And the current rules that came out with the proposed rules made it very, very difficult. And the scary part was, as we were talking to people, is if you started a business when you were a young man, like our guest tonight, who's been in business for 40 years, and if you decide today I want to retire, take it easy, and my children are taking over, well, technically, according to the rules, you've just went from being a good shareholder who can get whatever you want from the company to being a bad shareholder. You shouldn't be getting paid anything for it unless you work for it, and yet you started the business. And that's how the rules were so complicated. So we're hoping to see them narrow down the definition, make it a lot simpler, and make it a lot less of a challenge between the business owner and the Canada Revenue Agency in terms of discussing things.
How does the Revenue Canada establish who's really quote unquote working at the business, who's part time? I mean, it seems hard to police that kind of thing.
Well, there's aside from asking the receptionist, show me where Mr. and Mrs. Spouses and all that. But if the family is in there, I mean, you can usually, if they're a director, you'll know. If they're a signing authority, you know. If the child is doing something in the business, they can see. They can determine job descriptions, emails, etc. That becomes difficult. Where it becomes really difficult, though, is, Dan, I can determine what you do in your work. How much are you worth? So if I think you're worth a lot less than what you think you are worth, we're into a battle. So you're going to be asking a judge to make that decision. So that's the income sprinkling.
Yeah, and there's no question that it's going to be a question of fact, but there's going to be a lot of gray zone.
That's
so
right.
Let's go to capital
gains exemption. Well, if I understand this correctly, they're backing off on the limitation of the capital gains exemption. The original proposal said, well, the only capital gain exemption we think is justifiable is to the founder, to the CEO, the man or the woman running the business. Everybody else in the family, unless you're also very important in the family, do not deserve getting the capital gains exemption. And if you try to get it, we will tax you in an inordinate manner. Which led to many cases double tax. They seem to have been backing off because there been a lot of unintended consequences by saying that. If a shareholder is not going to get a capital gain and get a capital gains exemption, is going to be taxed as something else. There's a lot of things that can happen to a shareholder.
What about the structures that exist today where you have that 15-year-old as a shareholder?
Well,
it's going to be 18 eventually.
That we don't know. There'll be more information coming out this week, we hear. So far has been what we heard on the news conference that came out around noon today, and some brief documentation in here. The other item was capital gains and converting. They seem to have recognized that there's a lot of unintended consequences with what they wrote. So they may be looking at it to avoid double taxation, which is inherent in what they wrote, and what I call retroactive taxation as well. The fact that they couldn't figure this out before writing it, and we pay a lot of people to be very smart in finance and justice, scares me as a taxpayer that they didn't think this through and they waited for us. The other area which they haven't spoken to, but I'm thinking that. And the way they mentioned the decrease in the small business rate is the taxation of investment income in private corporations. So what they're still not happy about is that if you did now pay, as I said, in 2 years' time, here in Quebec will be a 17% tax rate. That's 83 cents left over to do something. If you don't want to invest it in your business, or if your business doesn't need the money, then fine. You're going to pay it into a holding company and use that money to invest in the stock market, to invest in real estate, to do something else, which they're not interested in letting you have those 83 cents. What is going to happen there, we're not sure yet. I know they came up with ideas in July 18. They didn't discuss it on this time around, but I'm getting the feeling that they keep saying that we're reducing the rate to help businesses grow, create jobs. We're not reducing the rate so you can store more cash in your holding company for your retirement. So there's going to be more fun coming.
But that question of intent is also a big gray zone, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of commentary and backlash from that one.
All right, we'll continue to follow this as we go along. And coming up next, our profile for the evening: Victor, Susanna, and Richard Zilber of Intercoupe Le Spa.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL Montreal's Josh Miller with you. And this evening, let's introduce our guests. We have Victor, Susanna, and Richard Zilber of Intercoupe Le Spa. Victor and Richard, welcome to CJD.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you.
So first question is the easiest. What do you do for a living? Tell us about Intercoupe Le Spa.
Intercoupe was created 40 years ago for servicing men to start with. I wanted to create a place where people feel comfortable to come in and give a great service.
Now, when you say create a men's salon, is that cutting hair? Is it manicure, pedicure? Like, what are the types of services that you started out with when you
We
first started?
started with haircut for men, manicure, pedicure. Then we grew from there slowly until we reached to Richard, and to do the women's hair.
And today, what's the full range of service that you offer at Intercoupe Le Spa?
Okay, so it's hair for men, hair for women, manicure, pedicure for men, manicure, pedicure for women, massotherapy, aesthetic, and everything.
So you've come quite a long way in the 40 years.
Absolutely, yeah, exactly.
When you first started 40 years ago, you were working elsewhere at the time? How did you start your own business? What was that first
I
moment?
wanted to create my own because it was a different atmosphere where I was working. I wanted to create a family, and I like to teach, and I like to give a chance to new people who come into the business. And I want to make sure that people who work with me try to stay, and I try to keep them happy. I have people who are with me 30 years, other people 24, and I have a girl who works with me for manicure, pedicure for men, which is exceptional. Usually they last 5 years. She's with me 24 years.
Now let's talk about location, because I understand there's huge loyalty and customer base, but location must play a bit of a role. You started out 40 plus years ago. Where were you located then?
I was when I started.
When you first started?
When I first started, I was right there, not too far. And
On Descaries?
On Descaries, yeah. I came back from downtown directly to Descaries because I believed more in Descaries. And because I was doing women's hair from 1967 to 71. Then I went 2 years downtown, and I said, I want to come back to Descaries because I felt that I could create what I want over there.
And did you ever go back downtown in the years?
No. Since then, I'm at my place 7 days a week, and I love it.
Now, why exactly Descaries? Is it a focus? Is it the location because it's central to where your customers are? Is it a parking issue? Why that location?
It's centered. First of all, it's centered. People pass by every day by Descaries. I heard not too long ago that on my boulevard there is 8,000 cars passing by in the front of the salon. And I knew that because I wanted to create something that people stay at the salon as a loyal customer for a long time. I didn't want to lose customer every 2 years. I love people and I want to do their hair. And today I have customers who are fidel with me for 40 years.
Was it difficult finding that first location, dealing with the landlord, a lease? How was that experience when you first started?
I had a good experience, and I was known since I was young over there. And the first guy trusted me to rent me the place. And from there it got too small, and we moved bigger and bigger. And now I'm in a place where it's 3 floors and with full service salon.
Is it, and dealing with the landlord, like, your hair salon, your business background is not writing leases or signing leases.
Yeah.
So how did you, as an entrepreneur in the métier and the passion that you love of cutting hair, how did you get to understand and deal with leases, or did you have the right people around you at the time?
I had the right people around me to advise me, and also I had a certain instinct, and I knew the man who I rent from today for 50 years, and he gave me carte blanche for his building.
Excellent. We also have Richard Zilber here, who is also part of Intercoupe. Richard, tell me how you kind of got in or got back with Victor over time.
Recently, a few months ago, I went back after I've worked in several salons in Montreal. My career, which spans 34 years, 10 of those years, those last years, have been in Montreal. It's my favorite city from all the cities I've lived in. I just love Montreal. I went back to Intercoupe primarily because of the environment and the spaciousness and the quality and the warmth. I've seen assembly line salons. I've seen a lot of people being processed in my history as a hairstylist, and that's just not what we do. What we do is we take an individual and we give them one at a time. We give them the best we can, and I have 34 years behind me as a technician, a colorist, also a I call it sculpting, but some people call it hair cutting. I consider it hair sculpture. And doing that kind of work and making people happy, the environment is the right place for me. So sometimes you have to go a few places to know where you want to be. Fortunately, I've lived in many cities. That's why I have such a affinity for being here in Montreal. It's my favorite.
When you came back, did you bring a change with you? Intercoupe has been known for many years to be a men's salon. When you came back, did you enhance on the women's side of things?
Well, yeah, because I specialize really in I'm a cosmetologist licensed in the States. I mean, my training is to work with women as a hairstylist. I also do sometimes men, but primarily I work with women, and it's just because it's slightly different in a sense where the shapes and what women want in color is very different. Men may want a blended color, women want 100% coverage, women want curves and they want softness, men want lines, they want masculine shapes. So there is a whole artistry when it comes to doing women's hair, and that's what I practice, and that's what I do.
We're chatting with Victor Susanna and Richard Zilber of Intercoupe Le Spa. More with them in just a minute. And later in the show, we'll talk about HR, culture, and conflict resolution, all coming up on today's Entrepreneur.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business. My name is Dan Delmar, along with FL's Josh Miller. Coming up in the program, we'll talk HR with Michel Mayette about culture and conflict resolution. But for now, we're joined by Victor Susanna and Richard Zilberg of Intercoupe Le Spa. 40 years in business, Victor, on Carrie. And we're just talking during the break, Josh, about how we have all these Jewish Moroccan connections. Did you find, Victor, that when you got into the business, was it good to sort of get ingrained into a cultural community and to sort of have the word spread like that?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of my reason coming back to Carrie was to service also my community and to give them a chance to meet each other, and that's what Intercoupe is. Many people come in to meet and to enjoy staying at the place.
Now, there's no question that people have to find you. It's great you have a loyal customer base, but it had to start somewhere, and marketing certainly must have played a large role over the 40 years. Very different today, I'm sure, than what it was when you first started 40 plus years ago. Do you remember what you used to do for marketing?
We used to use newspaper, basically local newspaper like the Suburban, Canadian Jewish News, and Hampstead Herald, and because it was a local. And it was very good, but over the year it changed, and all the multimedia that was offered to me, I used them day and night to be able to go into a new era of doing business.
And today, and not just today, but certainly over the last several years, there's no question that the online marketing and I look at Dan because that's your passion as well. The social media. How have you kind of gone from that newspaper to social media? Was it a difficult jump for you?
No, I enjoy it because it keeps me busy. I'm not a person who sleeps much overnight, and so I went to look over it, and I saw that it was great to go use whatever they offered me.
And are you active on social media now?
Yes, day and night.
What do you get into any specific campaigns or any like what's your style when you're dealing with social media?
My style is to advise my customers and their friends, because by reaching everybody on the same time, I've been able to attract a lot of new customers over the new year, and it worked. It really gave me what I was looking for.
When you're looking at your customer base, there's quite a variety of age. I would imagine. What would you say is the variety or the range of age?
The range of age would be from 30 to 65, 70. And also in the past 2 years, we've been attracting a lot of younger crowd, which is from 18 and up.
Would you attribute that to your online, to the social media presence?
Definitely.
And when you say active, how much time do you devote? Can you figure out how much time you devote in a week? A lot of entrepreneurs, they say I want to do it. They say we want to be active. And I'm looking at both you, Victor, and I guess I'm looking at you too, Dan, because you guys know how much time and effort it takes to put into your social media campaigns. How much effort?
I'm online from 6:15 in the morning, and I advertise what I need to advertise for the day, and I'm in every day, and at night also, and I prepare all the time something. I use everything that is there: Instagram, Facebook, whatever.
Are you buying ads as well? Do you purchase ads on Facebook?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we
Okay.
do.
And you
We
found them
go.
effective?
Yeah, for sure. It's amazing. It's amazing, and also by doing it this way, I've been make it more wide to reach my clientele and other people because I use their friend over their friend over their friends.
Now, there's also, do you offer promotions? Is promotions like, discounts every now and then? Does that play a big role in your marketing?
Absolutely. Groupon was a big help when a new hairdresser starts. Like Richard, when he first came in, had no clientele, like he said, coming from the States, from different salons and everything. And I use Groupon, I use Living Social, I use N-Crowd, I use all of them to create for new customers. And it really, really worked.
Was it easy to find? Was it easy to deal with the Groupon? Like, how did you find it? Are you outsourcing, or you're just so resourceful you're finding these on your own?
Groupon contacted me in the beginning when they came to Montreal, but after that I went by myself and I discovered every time something.
Yeah, he's resource. That's a good word.
And I even did not too long ago my own Intercoupon. Which was a promotion. Intercoupon for Richard, yeah. Called it Intercoupon
He really
myself.
does well. I've worked in a lot of salons. He really knows how to bring in people through that. And he's enjoying it, and he's relentless. He doesn't stop with that. And he creates things. He creates deals. And he's very good at that. And that's not my field, but I'm so happy that he's helped me. He's given me so many people, and it was me and my responsibility to bring them back. And I've had a very high return rate because of the quality of work. And
you mentioned people, Richard, and Victor too. Now, we just getting on that topic because there's no question. You talked about a warm environment. You talked about people wanting to come into the location, people feeling at home and comfortable. It takes the right people in your location to create that proper, warm, welcoming environment. Victor, was it difficult to find your people over the years, and how do you keep them?
Because today the hairdressers are very independent and they could work anywhere. So many years ago, I started to give them a condo-style operation. Each one has his chair and his own boss. By being serviced that way, they give me back in return a lot of service. And they feel independent, they feel like their own boss, and they love it.
If they're their own boss and they're operating in their own condo, do they still collaborate amongst each other? Because you have different services, and I'm sure it's one customer that goes from one to the other. Do they still collaborate well together?
Oh, yeah, we still, even with the condo style operation, we still have Intercoupe first, which is we all work for Intercoupe, including me. We're separate and together. This way they could be the artist that they want to, because an artist, you cannot tell him what to do. He has to do what he wants to do.
Is it difficult to work with artists?
Yes and no, but I'm an artist myself. So I could understand them. I relate to them.
Passion abounding everywhere. No
That's
question
right.
about it.
Coming up, we'll talk about some HR issues with Micheline Mayette on culture and conflict resolution. And stay tuned for Victor and Richard's one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur that's on the way.
For professional advice with a personal touch, consult FL Fuller Landau, Chartered Professional Accountants and Business Advisors. Click on flmontreal.com.
Welcome back. Inspiring stories from outstanding business people. Dan Delmar and FL Montreal's Josh Miller with you on today's Entrepreneur. This evening we have Victor Susana and Richard Zilberg of Intercoupe Le Spa. Their one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur is on the way. But first we welcome back Micheline Mayette, HR consultant at FL, to talk about culture and conflict resolution, Josh.
And we're talking a little bit before, if we're linking it back to Intercoupe, and you have a group of people operating in a room or a few rooms. They have different characters. They're kind of the artiste type mentality. How do you go about it? What would be some of your suggestions to entrepreneurs about maintaining a common culture?
I mean, I always say that culture really starts at the top and trickles its way down. So I in this case, you can really see with Victor, his warm personality and his façon faire, him saying also that he's an artist, so he understands that environment. So I always say culture really starts at the top, and it's really in the actions that you see, and not in, some companies will put values up or a mission up on their website, but it's really, how people live from one day to the other in the actual actions and the behavior, the examples that they see from the top.
It's also constant reinforcement, right? You can't just, set some example one day and then hopefully it'll last 3 years until you set it again.
Yeah, I mean, it really varies from one type of environment to the other, but like we're talking here about maybe a more creative environment. So, I mean, you have to give people the freedom and the leeway to be creative and to explore and try new things. It doesn't mean that there can't be certain guidelines around that. So, sometimes I see in tech companies where they want to have very flexible work hours, but there's a lot of unsaid rules in a work environment, and often it's the unsaid rules that end up creating the culture. So you could say, great, so people can work from wherever, whenever they want. So what if somebody doesn't answer an email from their boss all day? Is that okay? And so people often will say, well, no, that's not okay. So often it's those unsaid rules that need to be spoken to a certain extent and passed down, especially to new employees who are starting, so that they can grasp this culture, this kind of intangible culture, as early as possible.
Now, it's great when everybody's pretty much on the same page and they understand, but then there's times where people are on different pages and they don't necessarily understand the rules, and then they start arguing with each other because they don't understand. And then we get to conflicts between team members, between employees. So we're kind of into this conflict resolution. Is it up to the employees to handle, the managers, the employer, the entrepreneur? How do you kind of navigate through that?
It really just depends on, what stage the conflict is at. So, I mean, if it's early on, I always say that if there's a manager or somebody who, sees what's going on, if there's a dispute of some kind, if the employees can't work, ideally the employees should be able to work it out themselves. But if they can't, then the manager should have, alarm bells that are going off that, okay, there's a problem here and I might need to get involved, and really to get involved as early as possible. So really time is the worst enemy of any type of conflict. So when you see some disagreements brewing, it's best to, if you need to, encourage the people to talk together, to try to find a resolution, or if not, then to get involved.
Do you deal with it head on? Do you kind of play mind games? Do you take one aside and the other aside and try and figure it out? Or it just kind of depends?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. I mean, there's certain stages of a conflict that you can be aware of to know kind of what stage your conflict is at. So if it's something, sometimes it starts off one person doesn't like another, somebody did something that the other person, didn't appreciate. So often it starts off with some snubbing. So maybe one person kind of ignores the other person or gossips about them a bit. So, often it starts very small. So a lot of people say, oh, it's nothing to worry about. But then after, there can be a confrontation. People can start building cliques, against the other person. So once you start seeing that type of thing happening, then it's getting to become a more serious conflict, and really management needs to get involved at that point, for sure.
Victor, do you deal with issues head on? If there's any conflicts amongst your team, or there isn't because it's such a warm environment, do you basically just try to deal with these issues head on?
You have to deal with these issues, but to make sure these issues are not happening in my place is I make the rule, but I'm the first one to obey to the rule. I have to show them that me too, I obey. So it makes it easy for me to do or ask anything in the salon because of that.
Now, Micheline, speaking of rules, I guess if you're a certain number of employees and you have a policy manual, would you have these conflict resolutions, these kind of steps that employee can take to fix their problem?
I mean, every company really by law should have some kind of policy on psychological harassment. So it's actually a law in Quebec. So it's really important that every company have some kind of process that people should follow. I mean, the first stage can be for employees to try to work it out themselves, but that at a certain point, the employee needs to know who they should speak to if this happens. And often, it's funny, a lot of conflicts actually start off with some kind of lack of clarity. So it could be a policy that's not written and a little bit unclear. It could be unclear directives that are given to one person. The other person doesn't see it the same way. So often there's a lack of clarity that actually causes the conflict in the first place.
So be clear, be consistent, and be constant in your communication, and hopefully there's no conflicts that will arise. Thanks very much, Micheline.
Yeah, you're welcome.
And right now, we'll turn to Victor and Richard, and maybe Richard first, and we'll ask you, Richard, what would be your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur?
Well, as a hairstylist, this is a profession, it's a trade with no limit to the education that can be obtained. And my advice would be, if you're young and you're starting off, don't be disillusioned. There's a lot of hairstylists out there, but you can rise to the top by being with the best in the industry and never giving up, and every day working to make that day a stepping stone so you're better each and every day with your technique, with your capacity to make the person happy. It must be never stop going up, because it's not all about it's not all about the earnings that you make. It's about also the quality of skills that you have as the years pass, and it becomes so much fun when you have people that are so happy with the work you do, and that's why you're going to work, because you're making people happy. So find the best and stick with them as a young person.
Build it and it will come. And we'll turn to Victor, Susanna, and on your 40 years of experience, can you pick out one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur?
If you want to become a hairdresser today and be an entrepreneur or owner of a hair salon, I think you should be aware that it's a service, and you always have to be there to service your clientele. They expect you to be there, and it's normal to be there. I don't see it as a duty, I see it as a service. And if you're not there, and there not for 1 year or 2 years, but for many years, and make sure also you go to every hair show to renew yourself. You have to renew yourself, but respect is the number one rule.
Excellent. Thanks very much, guys. Dan, the very quick takeaway is there's no doubt the level of passion that these guys have for their métier is off the charts.
Victor, Susanna, and Richard Zilberg of Intercoupe Le Spa on Dakari. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks to Micheline Mayette as well at HR, and Nick Moretus on tax at FL for all their tips today. We're off next week again. A bit of an irregular start to the season, unfortunately, but we have the municipal debate next Monday night. So we'll be back in 2 weeks right here on Today's Entrepreneur. Don't forget to check out all the stories, 8 years worth, at the community section at flmontreal.com. Have a good night.